Well, explosive accusations. Senator David Vitter is accusing President Obama of shredding the Constitution. And Congressman Dan Burton is accusing the president of acting like a king or dictator. So why are the Republican lawmakers so angry? They are furious about President Obama's recess appointments. Republicans say that January appointments of a consumer watchdog and other officials violate the separation of powers. But today, the Justice Department said those appointments are illegal. So what will GOP lawmakers do next? Senator David Vitter joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta. Good to be with you.
Nice to have you. Well, shredding the Constitution, that's, I guess that's not beating around the bush. Tell me why you are so passionate about this.
Well, because there do exist recess appointments, but they have to happen during a recess. And no previous president has done what President Obama did last week to fundamentally ignore that rule, which has been acknowledged and agreed upon and lived by both Democrats and Republicans previous to this. In fact, in 2010, the Obama Assistant Solicitor General argued my point, my side of this argument before the Supreme Court. Earlier, the Clinton Justice Department took the same position. Harry Reid has taken the same position as me, but yet because of pure political expediency, because the constitutional rules weren't in his favor, President Obama just shredded it last week and did these unconstitutional so-called recess appointments.
Well, wasn't the whole point of not going into a real recess was to make sure that he couldn't do that, make these recess appointments? And recess appointments have been rather routine among presidents going back, for decades. President Reagan did them, President Bush 41,
yes,
President Clinton, President Bush 43. And so that would sort of been like, it depends on whose turn it is to sort of play around with this little rule.
Well, that is why we didn't go into recess, but Congress has the clear and the sole authority to make its rules and to determine what is a recess, and that's directly in the Constitution. And again, this has all been acknowledged and agreed upon by everyone before last week, including even the Obama administration's own Assistant Solicitor General in 2010.
So why don't you all stick around, just not have a recess at all, just stick around, do the job, and vote on his watchdog appointment or not?
Well, the Senate and the House have been coming in every 3 days. The other important point, Greta,
why not just act on it? I mean, like this whole sort of, game that's played, I use the word game, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
Well, Greta, we did act on it, and this is a key point. In the case of Richard Cordray, it's not that the Senate has been dragging its feet or been obstructionist. We've had a full debate and a vote on Richard Cordray. President Obama's problem is he didn't get the votes to move forward. He didn't get 60 votes. We had a full debate and we had a vote. In the case of the other appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, President Obama only made those nominations right before Christmas, and the Democratic chairman of the relevant committee hasn't even scheduled a hearing for those appointments yet.
So again,
the president hasn't... The Senate hasn't been dragging its feet.
All right, so with Cordray, if I've got this right, is that you all did your job and the president didn't get enough votes, so he waited for all of you to get out of town a little bit, and so as soon as you all got out of town, he made this appointment, and you were all trying to make sure they didn't do that, so you didn't go into a real recess, a full recess, but a pro forma session in an effort to stop it. Is that sort of how this works out?
That is exactly correct, and the Senate and the House alone, under the Constitution, have the prerogative to make the rules under which they live, including when and how we go into recess.
So what's going to happen from here? Tell me, where does this go?
Well, I've been emailing with colleagues. I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow, and I think there are two big categories we need to consider. One is a legal challenge going to the courts, ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. I think it's a very ripe case. We've done everything we can legislatively, and I think we have an excellent case on the legislative side. The second is, I personally think there need to be some consequences for this in terms of dealing with other nominations.
I'm curious what Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has to say about this. Has he had any sort of response at all to this?
Well, before this incident, particularly under President Bush, after defending the same practices and saying recess appointments could only be made in a real recess, significant recess, more than 3 days, he consistently took that position when he was trying to block President Bush's appointments. He completely flipped as soon as President Obama needed him to.
So now he has changed his mind on how this should be done.
Right.
Senator, nice to see you. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thanks, Greta. Appreciate it.